Good afternoon, everybody. My name is.
Hold on, wait a second. Okay, so now you can begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kalisha Alaha. This week, my group and I, which are Jada Broom and Paulina James, will be presenting on Chapter 15, Leading Change. Next slide. Chapters or objectives. So the first thing that we'll be looking at will be to recognize social and economic pressures for change in today's organization. The second thing that we would be looking at in this chapter would be the implementation of the 8-stage model of planned major change and use everyday strategies for gradual change. The third thing that we will be looking at in this chapter will be how to expand your own and others' creativity. The fourth thing that we'll be looking at is the use of techniques and communication, training, and participation to overcome resistance to change. And the fifth thing that we'll be looking at is addressing the negative impact of change. Part 1. Recognize the social and economic needs for change in today's society. So I have a question for the class. What comes to mind when you hear the words leading change? Anybody? Okay, so if no one will answer,
Yes. When you hear the word change, you think about turning from one action to another for improvement.
yes, you're quite right. So it's like a difference, right?
For me, change means a different direction, basically, because it can be both positive or negative at the same time. So change can be
Yes,
both a
you are
difference.
quite
What
right.
is a difference in direction?
Yes, you are quite right. So definition of change. Change is defined as to make someone or something different, to alter or modify. Change leadership is the practice of approaching changes across an organization with positivity, enthusiasm, and a growth mindset. So, in order to have change within an organization, we have to look at the positive and the negative side, but we want to be able to have success within that organization. Moving on to the next slide. What does leading with change mean? Leading with change means is a way to make change and transition to new approaches. Change management is a framework or process that focuses on managing people as they experience change. It's about ensuring that people have the right resources, knowledge, and support so they can be successful. Having change within an organization is basically adding value to that organization, making or creating change that will ensure that the organization is successful. All parts of the organization needs to be successful. Moving on to the next slide. So today we'll be focusing on change or perish. Anybody would want to tell me what they think when they hear the word perish? Anybody? Okay, so if nobody wants to answer, perish basically means to die or to don't exist anymore. So according to Jack Welch, when the rate of change outside exceeds the rate of change inside, the end is in sight. This emphasizes the fact that internal organizational changes must keep pace with what is happening in the external environment. So this basically means that whatever goes on within an internal organization, it must keep pace with, or it must be adapt with the external environment as well. So the rapidity of social, economic, and technological change means that organizations have to be perpetually changing and adapting to keep pace within an organization. So a big problem for today's organization is the failure to adapt to all of these changes in the environment. Although there are many reasons for the failure to change and adapt, a primary solution to the problem is better change leadership. Leaders serve as the main role models for change and provide the motivation and communication to keep change efforts moving forward. Strong, committed leadership is crucial to successful change, and research has identified some key characteristics of change who can accomplish successful change projects. Next slide. So some of the characteristics leaders use to accomplish change, successful change, are: they define themselves as change leaders rather than people who want to maintain a status. They demonstrate courage. They also believe in employees' capacity to assume responsibility. They are able to assimilate and articulate values that promote adaptability. They recognize and learn from their own mistakes. So as a leader, you may make mistakes as well. So not only the employees may make mistakes, you may make mistakes. You have to be able to correct yourself in those situations. They are capable of managing complexity, uncertainty, and ambiguity. They have vision and they can describe their vision for the future in vivid terms. Moving on to the next slide. So, information on Barbara Way. So Barbara Way began her career at a HP lab, and it's not a place that people may think that massive change will take place. So Barbara Way used different opportunities to make the research lab the best research lab. As a changing leader, she also seeks advice from others on how she can accomplish this goal. Now, she also believes that to be a change leader, you have to always be willing to lose your job. So sometimes as a leader, you may make or you may advise that change may be made within an organization, and sometimes not everybody will be wanting to go to that extent or go that direction. So change does not happen easily, but as good leaders throughout the organization can facilitate change and help their organization adapt to external threats and new opportunities. So Barbara Way is an example of a change leader. One does not need to be a top leader to be a change leader. So this is a quote that my group and I came across when we were doing our research, and we wanted to share it with you all. In times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. So this quote basically means that as learners, we inherit the earth. So we continuously are learning, and then while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped, so while we find ourselves equipped to deal with all situations, right? Now we have to deal with a world that no longer exists. Characteristics and examples of change leaders. So there are 6 characteristics that are repeated as essential for change leader. So the first one is vision. Vision is possibly the most important ability of a change leader where the organization is performing at a higher level. Identifying how organizations will be performing differently and how they can get there is a key skill for a leader. This is not simply copying the practices of a competitor or advancing processes in the same way as they have done in the past, but seeing a vision that goes beyond traditions and accepted practices. The other characteristic would be coalition building. So, although we emphasize the importance of change leader, they certainly cannot drive the change on their own. It's essential that a change leader assembles a coalition with the right mix of expertise, contacts, and experiences to carry out the task. Having senior members on board in different departments bring different skills to the table and raise the profile of the strategy that will make tasks much easier for a change leader. Another characteristic of a change leader will be communication skills. Communication skills are excellent and is vital throughout the process for a change leader. Firstly, they must sell their vision across the organization, explaining the reasons for the strategy and the final outcome will often generate power. However, convincing some individuals may require more effort than some. Although it is important to initially get support from a senior management throughout the organization, it is equally important for long-term success. It is then also essential that the change leader continues to remind all individuals of the initial vision and the progress throughout the strategy. Another characteristic that is essential for a change leader will be interpersonal skills. As well as communication skills, the leader must be a good listener. And in order to lead change as successful as possible, these are general leadership attributes, but are particularly important when leading a change strategy. Another essential characteristic for a change leader would be motivation. So motivation throughout the process is a key. Often support for the strategy can diminish as deadlines are pushed back or the initial excitement is lost. An effective change leader will continue to remind employees of the initial vision and encourage them to continue to work towards it. Targets throughout the process can be set to motivate employees at different stages of change. The last and final characteristic that is essential for a change leader would be big picture. So the change leader should have a big picture of what is trying to be achieved throughout the process. This keeps all tasks aligned with the overall objective and helps to motivate employees. These skills will give any leader a strong foundation to drive their strategy forward. However, the situation will generally dictate when and if these skills should be used. Next slide, please. What is plan change? So plan change is the process of preparing an entire organization or a significant part of it to achieve new goals or to move in a new direction. So in order to have plan change, you need to plan, you need to take action, and this action would lead to a change into a new direction, right? Next slide. So there are different types of change. The first type is strategic change. This includes changes in business policies, structure, or processes. There's also people-centric change, includes instituting new parental leave policies or bringing in new hires. There's also the third change will be structural change, which includes shifts in management, teams, responsibilities of different departments, change of command, and job structure. The fourth change is technological change, which involves introducing new software or system to improve business processes. The fifth change will be unplanned change, which is a necessary action following unexpected events. The sixth change is remedial change. Occurs when a problem is identified and a solution needs to be implemented. Okay, so there's two types of organizational change. So there are two types of organizational change. There's adaptive changes, which are small incremental changes organizations adopt to address needs that evolve over time. There's also transformational changes, which are large in scale and scope than adaptive changes. Transformational changes involve major shifts in mission, strategy, structure, performance, and processes. So adaptive changes are small changes, whereas transformational changes are larger and much bigger than adaptive changes within an organization. Why is the plan change process important? The plan change process is important because it's essential to help organization review its procedures and identify where more efficiency can be achieved. So sometimes an organization will be running and, it may not be running as efficiently as other organizations. So this is where plan change comes in and where plan change is important. So in order for the whole organization to be successful, they need to be efficient or working efficiently. So now we would look at the 8 stages of significant change. So this is the Cutter's 8-step model. So the first step will be to create a sense of urgency, right? So creating a sense of urgency, this can be done in the following ways. Identifying and highlighting the potential threats and the repercussions which might crop up in the future. Examining the opportunities which can be tapped throughout effective interventions. Initiate honest dialogues and discussions to make people think over the prevalent issues and give convincing reasons to them. Request the involvement and support of industry people, key stakeholders and consumers on the issue of change. The second stage of significant change will be build, guide, coalition. Right? This is a forming powerful guide coalitions. This can be achieved in the following ways. Identifying the effective change leaders in your organization and also the key stakeholders, requesting their involvement and commitment towards the entire process. Forming a powerful change coalition who would be working as a team and identifying the weak areas within the team and ensuring that the team involves many influential people from various cross-functional departments and working in different levels in the company. The third stage of significant change would be form strategic vision initiatives. This can be achieved by determining the core values, defining the ultimate vision, and the strategies for realizing a change in an organization. Also, by ensuring that the change leaders can describe the vision effectively and in a manner that people can easily understand and follow. So the fourth, that's not. Sorry about that, sir. So the fourth step would be enlist volunteer army. So it basically deals with removing obstacles, so ensuring that the organization process and structure are in place and aligned with the overall organizational vision. So continuously checking for barriers or people who are resisting change, implement proactive actions to remove the obstacles involved in the process of change. Also by rewarding people for endorsing change and supporting the process. So now we'll look at the generate short-term wins. Right. So creating short-term wins. By creating short-term wins early in the changing process, you can give a feel of victory in the early stages of change. Creating many short-term targets instead of long-term goals, which are achievable and less expensive and have lesser possibilities of failure. Also, by rewarding the contributors of people who are involved in the meeting and targets. The next part would be sustaining acceleration, right? So sustaining acceleration is to achieve continuous improvement by analyzing the success stories individually and improving from those individual experiences. The last and final step of significant change will be institute change. So this would be discuss the successful stories related to the change initiatives on every given opportunity. Ensure that the change becomes an integral part in your organizational culture and is visible in every organizational aspect. Also by ensuring that the support of the existing company leaders as well as the new leaders continue to extend their support towards change. Right. So in order to implement the Kotter's model, you need to know the advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages of the Kotter model will be it has an easy step-by-step model which provides a clear description and guidance on the entire process of change, and it is relatively easy for being implemented. It emphasizes on the involvement and acceptability of the employees for the success in the overall process. Major emphasis is on preparing and building acceptability for change instead of the actual change process. So using the Kotter's model, you'll be able to implement change within an organization in a step-by-step manner without having being all over the place. So the disadvantages of the Kotter's model would be, since it is in a step-by-step model, skipping even a single step may result in serious problems. The process is quite time-consuming. The model is essentially down and discourages any scope for participation or co-creation. And the model can build frustration and dissatisfaction among the employees if the individual requirements are given due attention. So just as everything in today's society has an advantage and a disadvantage. So in order to implement the Kotter's model, you need to know the advantages and the disadvantages of this model. So the importance of the Kotter's model. So the Kotter's model emphasizes on the involvement and acceptability of employees by forming a guide coalition and getting organizational buy-in for the success of change, the change initiative. It highlights the importance of creating a sense of agency. So now I'll hand you over to Paulina, who will be explaining Leading with Major Change Part 2.
Good day, everyone. So I'll be touching on Part 2, and the objectives of Part 2 are the 4 everyday strategies of influencing everyday change, innovative organizations and creative people, 5 elements of innovation organization, the major components of leading creative people, and 5 characteristics of creative people. Next slide, please. Strategies of influencing everyday change. So, creative self-expression. According to Daft, this is the least conspicuous way to promote change and involves a single leader acting in a way that others will notice and that reflects the values or behaviors he or she wishes to instill in followers. This involves the pursuit of beauty or emotions. The process calls upon heart and intuition as much as mind and intellect. Ultimately, creative self-expression is about showing your individuality. There are many types of creative expressions, such as painting and dancing. Suitable words. Saying the right thing to someone can influence and motivate that person to take that leap that they may be afraid or is procrastinating to make. A leader motivating team members can be the start of a great opportunity. Right opportunities. According to George Bernard Shaw, one should not wait for the right opportunity, but create it. With this strategy, leaders look for and establish opportunities moving forward towards change. Alliance building has to do with starting with the end goal in mind, finding the right partners, and finding the best way to move forward as a team to get tasks done more quickly and efficiently. Everyday change can be both private, which is the leader working alone, and public, which is when the leader works with others. Next slide, please. Innovative organizations and creative people. What is an innovative organization? An innovative organization is one that engages everyone throughout the organization in the task of developing and implementing new ways to reach the organization's goals. For example, companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung. The leader of such organization finds ways to effectively promote creativity in the departments where it is most needed and ensures that each individual is doing his or her part. To tie into this, leaders strive to create an environment that is centered around creativity to ensure that they are able to keep up with continuous everyday change. How can a creative person be identified? Creative people often put a lot of thought and care into their work. They look at an issue from all possible angles as they seek solutions. Then they test all the possible solutions until they find one that best meets their needs. At times, this may mean that they pay attention to details that seem minor to others. Next slide. Elements of innovation organization. Alignment is where, Alignment is where everyone within the organization or the team is doing their right part to ensure that the goal and vision is achieved. As the leader, it is important to constantly remind everyone of the reason why the organization exists in the first place. It is also important to ensure that everyone feels a sense of belonging and know that they are being heard instead of just told. Many companies use an idea incubator, which according to Tim Muller, is an in-house program that provides a safe harbor where ideas from employees throughout the organization can be developed without interference from company bureaucracy or politics. Creative values are the outcomes of original thinking that has worth and importance. This includes ideas that are not obvious, new, and imaginative. Leaders tend to encourage an entrepreneurial spirit by motivating members to take profitable risks and explore new ideas. An approach used to develop new business opportunities, products, or services within an organization by taking risks and experimenting can be identified as entrepreneurship or corporate entrepreneurship. Unofficial activity. This is where leaders give people free time for activities that are not officially sanctioned. This gives individuals an opportunity to work on something of their choice outside their job description. This can foster a potential new direction for the organization. An example provided by the Leadership Experience textbook is Google. Managers at Google keep creativity alive by letting people spend 20% of their time, one day of each week, working on any project of their choice, even if the project doesn't tie in with the company's center mission. Diverse stimuli. A stimulus can either push someone in a completely new direction or give fresh insight to an ongoing project. Things like rotating people into different jobs can be a great way of achieving this. Within company communication or internal communication shares information about the company so employees can perform their jobs well. This way, everyone stays informed. It is especially important because employees' engagement and productivity will be boosted. Next slide. Major components of leading creative people. Leaders can increase individual creativity by facilitating brainstorming. Brainstorming encourages people to come up with thoughts and ideas that can at first seem a bit silly. To effectively brainstorm, everyone must be open-minded. Ideas should not be criticized under a negative light. Though the idea may not seem to make sense, you may be surprised how it can work with some changes. Each member should contribute his or her ideas openly instead of not contributing at all. The more the better. Brainstorming is very important, whether it is face-to-face or electronic, which is simply meeting on a device like a computer to generate ideas. Lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is a more creative approach rather than thinking in a sequential order, which is practically the opposite and is known as linear thinking. Problems are solved by an indirect approach, typically by viewing the problem in a new and unusual light. And creative intuition. Creative intuition is when the subconscious mind remembers all experiences that the conscious mind may have forgotten. This is the ability to quickly identify valuable or useful creative ideas without conscious thought. As with all intuition, it is instantaneous without any conscious understanding of how the mind created the idea. Next slide. Okay. 5 characteristics of creative people. Creative people are focused approach, which means that they focus on a particular topic or turn their attention to the task at hand. They concentrate on it, think about it, discuss it, or deal with it, rather than turning their attention to something else without properly completing that task. They are self-confident, which means that they accept and trust themselves and have a sense of control in their life. They know their strengths and weaknesses well and have a positive view of themselves. They are open-minded, which means that they are willing to consider new ideas and are open to others' ideas and perspectives. Enjoys variety, meaning that they are adventurous and open to trying new things. They are emotionally expressive, which means that they know how to show how they feel. This can be through simple gestures, through an instrument, art, and so on. And there are many other characteristics of creative people that are not mentioned. Next slide, please. Okay, so I have a simple question here. Would you say that you are a creative individual? And what do you believe to be your strongest characteristic, if so? So anybody can answer. Okay, well, I have an answer here, if nobody. I would say yes, and my strongest characteristic is my ability to be open-minded. So I just consider other people's perspective, not just my own, because you can see it from a new light rather than what just where you were thinking. So now I would turn you over to Jada to continue the presentation.
Hi, good day, everyone. I am Jada, and I'm presenting on part 3 of our presentation, which will be on the implementation and drawbacks of change. Part 3 objectives will be focusing on the techniques used to establish change, tools and steps towards implementing this change, and under those techniques, we are going to look at the CRN change model. Next, the next part of this, we will be addressing the negative effects and impacts of change. Things like personal compact, the critical aspect of implementing change, the two phases of change, leadership and downsizing of an organization, and what implementation techniques are used to soothe the process and ease tension of this change. Now, first we look at the techniques used to direct change, and we can first go back to the 8-stage model of rapid change. And well, I have it here, so I'll just read it out for you. And those 8 stages of implementing change requires 1 as the leader, 2, first create a sense of urgency. Then we will build I apologize, sorry. I lost it there. Okay, right. Right. Establish a sense of urgency, and then we have to build coordination. Establish sense of urgency, create a guiding coordination, develop and share the vision, communicate the vision, empower people to act on that vision, create short-term wins, consolidate and build on the gains. Also, the institution is which will result to the institutional change. Next, we will have the range of incremental changes, which we will be touching on as we go forward, how change is implemented and change in a variety of ways. Thirdly, we have emotional touch. One must have emotional elements that are essential to influence and persuade others to direct with change. Tools towards implementing change. These tools and aids of implementation of change are used to soothe the process and ease tension of change. First, we have communication. This is when people are open and honest. They can overcome resistance to change, and this creates a sense of control by reducing uncertainty and defining advantages as change goes forward. Second, we have participation and involvement. This encourages followers to participate and get involved in the design of change, training and equipping employees for performance task. Thirdly, we have the use of emotions. This is effective when leaders use emotional manipulation in ways like storytelling, metaphors, humor, symbolism, and personal touch. This is all to persuade and influence the followers in positive ways. Our last resort may result in leaders trying to fix a crisis. So this is called coercion. And what coercion is when a leader overcomes the resistance by threatening the employees with loss of job or promotion, or by firing or transferring them out altogether. Coercion should only be used in situations of crisis when rapid response is needed. So, moving forward, the steps towards implementing change. Now, to implement change, we might have to follow a few steps before it happens. And those steps are, firstly, the management must support the change. So in order for this to happen, management must support the change, which is straightforward. Secondly, this has to happen this has to happen to secondly, we have to have a cause of change, which is the why. Not only must we support it, but we must have a sense of why and the reason why we are changing. Thirdly, we have connections with the employees. We must have the ability to develop rapport and, again, use communication and all the tools to implement the change we must go back to and resort to allow for us to have a clear and certain path forward. So this is why we have to have connection. We have to have communication as a tool. Fourthly, we have communicate the change. Again, by connecting, we communicate the change and align it with the business goals. You have to align it with the goal, because if we don't have the communications and connections aligned with the goals, then we will be diverting essentially from the goal if we're not resorting to always keeping the goal at our forefront. Fifthly, we have training. Again, that's like implementing the tools. We must also train our organization with the proper skills and equipment to move forward. But then we have the implementation of change, right? This is when change is finally moving and progressing forward. This leads to us at our final point, which is 7. This is the measure of progress of change. If we do not have a measure of progress of change, then we are lost. We do not know, similar to the point that we must have a goal, we must also have a measure. Think back to well, I can't remember who did it, but we was talking about this having smart goals that is measurable, and if someone could recall. Goals. Right. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Measured goals are goals that progress. And those are the steps towards implementing change. Moving forward, we look at the CRN model of change. And this, this model gives us a brief understanding or a snippet of how our reaction, our emotional responses over time happens with change. Now, I'm going to give you all an example to put this in perspective, right? Because I figure it will be easier to explain it through that. And to to define the feelings you may have when change is going to happen, you might first realize that change always happens with two, well, let's not go there yet. Change will always happen with resistance, right? Change does not change does not go unnoticed, basically. And my example would be for, excuse me, sorry, for class today would be my transition from my first semester into my second semester. And that is where all these feelings identified here, shock, anger, resistance, acceptance, and healing moving forward, was emerged from me, right? I remember signing up. Who remembers registering for school, for class, when you have, obviously we all have anxiety around registration. Someone told me that registration is probably the most stressful part of university. That's just probably facts, because everyone will shake their head in agreement as I say that. And taking you back to that time when I was registering, I remember that there was this one course that I could not get into. Tell me why that one course was my only prerequisite required for this semester, and I am not getting into it. And the 2 weeks for registration approaching, and I'm stressed. I'm not just okay. I'm shocked at first, because I'm like, what it is, because I'm paying my I'm paying my college fees. College fees is it. And I just want to know why I'm not getting in, why I'm not getting into my classes. I'm trying to register. I want my mind going a mile a minute. And there's a lot of questions I would look at just in a minute that will arrive when we have feelings of shock. And then I was angry. I was just furious. I was like, why can't I get in? Why? Right? I was like, I just need to be able to register before the registration week finished, so it wouldn't be on me. And then I kind of was angry. I was like, it's better I don't register. It's better I just give up. That is resistance. And then eventually, as time goes on and communication was involved, I spoke to with my advisor, I gained clarity to move forward and accept and heal from the whole journey. So on this slide here, we have questions that may arrive from the same diagram here. And if we look at shock first, shock and panic, that is when we tend to overanalyze and have all the anxiety. This is what happens, and we ask, well, what I don't understand, or I just, this must not be right. I don't understand it. We start questioning and we uncertain. So obviously we're going to be spiraling from this, that, and the other. We're going to ask why, mainly why. Why is this happening? Sorry, no, what is happening? What is happening? Secondly, we get angry. And let me tell you, when this happened, when registration was happening, my grandma, my father, everybody else that could hear me vent was hearing it. And this is when, we ask, we're trying to find answers. So we vent into other people to see if they could sort out our emotions for us. But, at the end of the day, we have to suck it up and speak at a reasonable manner with the people who has to provide the information. You have to be able to control it when you reach there. And then we have resistance. Well, at a point you're gonna be like, well, yes, oh shucks, nobody's perfect. We all have our flaws, and that's just the way it is. I'm just gonna leave it. That's just, we're resisting it. At this point, we don't know how to fight it anymore. And lastly, well, the last questions we might have about it is, how can this be best? How can I best use this? How can I, I remember having a lot of learning experience, learning pains or growth pains, you might call it, from that experience alone, So this is where acceptance come in. You take the lesson from it, you take whatever you went through and make it a lesson. How can I improve? How can I use this feedback? Who can I help? Who can help me make this change? Continuing, sorry. I feel like I left out a slide. Excuse me. Okay, I'm moving forward, but definitely left out a slide. And sorry. And now we are going to address the negative impacts of change. And to address this, we must first look at the acceptance and opposition of we must first understand acceptance and opposition of change. A critical aspect of leading, this is the critical point, by the way, a critical aspect of leading people through change is understanding that it is normal for there to be resistance, and that there are often legitimate reasons for it. It's normal for resistance, right? Yeah, I'm missing all parts on my slide. Okay. To understand that there is legitimate reasons for the resistance of change, we must look at the personal compact. The underlying reason why employees resist change is that it violates the underlying reason why employees resist change is that it violates personal compact. Now, what personal compact is when there are is basically the reciprocal obligations of the reciprocal obligation of commitments and defined the relationships between employees and organization. Okay, so taking you all back to my example of school and me as a student. So it's not an employee and an organization, but a customer basically and an organization, which we are exhibiting reciprocal obligations. If you recall that I mentioned, I paid my student fees, so I expect them to be able to get me in my classes, because that is our reciprocal obligation. That is what personal compacts revolve around. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. So they also include, okay, so in the case of an employee, an organization, they include things such as job tasks, what jobs you're supposed to be performing, your job description, performance and requirements. You're supposed to perform at a certain particular requirement and no less, and sometimes it is expected for more, but that is again violating the personal compact rule. You need to be able to do mutual commitments where as much as I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Thirdly, we have the evaluation procedures. These are like, routine checks, routine standards, tests. Those are things we look at when we look at evaluation procedures. Fourthly and finally, we have compensation packages. This is as well and also important, as it requires you to running an organization requires you to have the incentive for people to work towards that standard you want to develop. So whenever there's no incentive, it violates again. Why should I work harder? Why should I achieve? Why should I look to, make things better if there's no compensation package at the end of the day? Change, to end this, we say that change can often violate personal compact between worker and organization. Whenever this happens, employees are more likely to act in resistance, and that explains the resistance we form from change. Now, we are going to look at the two phases of change within an organization. And to look at this, I want to define what are the two phases of change implies. And what that implies is that what are the two phases of change? We will define it as danger and opportunity. Change wears two faces, and those are danger and opportunity. The danger phase is usually seen first. Remember, the Sarah model, when we see shock, anger, and then we move on to acceptance, right? So again, if you look at danger, we would have these feelings arrive first. So the face of danger arrives first, and then we have the face of opportunity, which whenever we take a hard look at it, we would find that, at the end of the day, there's an opportunity, there's something involved better, greater to look forward for. So back to the slide. One of the greatest challenges faced by leaders is to effectively and humanely manage change. Even when change appears to be good for an individual, at the end of the day, if we look at it as opportunities, even when we do look at it as opportunistic moments for an employee, organizations can also unknowingly decrease morale, lower commitment, diminish trust, increase high levels of stress, make rapid adjustments to new tasks and systems, which also increase levels of stress. Possible job losses. Now we're going to touch on all of these, but if we look at it as this, you have defined the role or the goal already for an organization. Everyone is, I wouldn't say accustomed, but I can use it with accustomed, but everyone is comfortable with it, right? And then, without having bringing in the tools of implementation and having communication and emotional talks and emotional talks, communication, training and program planning. These things cannot happen just like that, or else, it would lead to decrease in morale, low commitment, diminishing trust, because you're just doing it without having the humaneness of communicating with your organization. And that will definitely require some sort of stress on your organization. Now, this slide addresses the crisis of change. And what the crisis of change is, going back to that change wears two faces, danger and opportunity. We must first address that, change change has these two faces. And what I found interesting in my research was that the Chinese word for crisis is similar to the two faces of change. This Chinese ideogram of crisis means, this Chinese ideogram right here means crisis, and essentially this word is crisis, roughly translated. And what the first character here says is danger, and the second one is opportunity. So you can see it evolves with our language that, you know, change is something to be equally feared and accepted. And well, you know, as we look back to the critical point that change causes resistance, change always involves danger, because change always begins with a loss. In order to change, you must let go of where you are going and where you want to get to be, and look at where you want to get to be. You will have to leave something behind and lose out on those experiences in order to have the new opportunity going forward. And I'm going on to my next slide. Structures related change. To define structured related change, we must define structured related change. While an organization is overall adaptability may be good, there are difficult changes which may affect the structure of companies, such as redefining positions, responsibilities, and even entire departments, which can possibly lead for downsizing. Right. As you can see, this is a little snip video that shows Squidward in a crisis asking for spared from change. It's a pun. And now, okay. And downsizing and an effect of change in our organization, as stated before, is leadership and downsizing of an organization. This happens when a reconstructing strategy is about to reduce the manpower to keep employment costs under control. And we do this in order to minimize stress on the whole organization, and rather this cutting your losses. So this is what the concept is about. And downsizing, however, is not always a result of a business losses. It may also mean takeovers or acquisitions or mergers. This is when, you know, more people are coming in or they want to change direction. If you need to change direction and bringing in new ideologies, you can't have the same people. You can't always go forward with the same people. Why? Because not all the values are no longer, I should say, aligned, and they no longer merge with each other. So, you know, to make that link, to make those acquisitions and mergers, you need to be able to make loose connections and connect with stronger connections, or lose those loose connections and connect with the strong connections. And two, a skilled leader a skilled leader will offer advance notice of this plan to downsize, as well as much details as possible, on the next step to be taken, and assuring assistance for these displaced employees. Going back to the point that we had earlier, using the tools of implementation, a skilled leader has to use these tools. Otherwise, it will always cause uproar within the organization. Drawbacks of downsizing in the organization. Research has found that some instances of massive downsizing achieved the quite opposite of its intention, to cause more harm, and causes more harm than good in an organization. When job cuts are necessary, leaders should prepare for conflict and gathered resistance to any proposed change, as well as decrease in moral and trust and commitment. All right, so again, that is all for us. Any questions? I hope that you all understand everything and we guide you all through the chapter in a good way.
I like this one. It make me just reflect on my own experiences at the workplace regarding change, and regarding you kind of don't want to go the direction with the company or with the bosses. So I could identify with it. I wish I could. I just look forward to going into the topic that you all went into, because it has so much of information and strategies and help that we as young people, or even as adults, can prepare ourselves for, and even in our own businesses, that when we are working with people, and when we want to change and do all these different things, that we understand how people feel when we are doing it, even as leaders. So I really felt like I was home, and it helped me to look at it differently, especially when it comes to management and as a employee, and compared to the employer wanted them change, so that I guess at the end of the day, it's only profit they're looking for. So thanks so much.
Well,
Okay,
we
I
actually saw
appreciate
when you
that.
got home.
I like that you enjoyed it. I appreciated that comment. Thank you so much. I hope that you see the same more clarity as you read forward.
All right, any more questions? All right, no, then I'm going to stop the recording now.